Hello there everyone, welcome to your guide to Deathmaster Snikch of the Skaven. As it is typical in these guides, I played through the initial turns and got a feel for the faction. I'll show you my conclusions and in the end provide you some army compositions that I would try out in my campaigns. As always, not an in-depth guide, just what I would do before starting up a campaign. Without further, here we begin with Deathmaster Snikch. So for your short victory conditions, you need to perform 8 Eshin actions, more on that on the mechanics, destroy the factions of the Dimmed Suns, the Celestial Loyalists, and the Northern Provinces with Miao Ying, and to occupy Loot Razor Sack 30 different settlements. Rather quick, short victory, enemies are nearby, and it should be easy to achieve overall. It's a great way to get a hold of the faction, and then decide if you wish to continue. The reward is +3 to recruit rank to all units, useful to ensure you always have better recruits in other factions. The long victory, achieve the short, occupy Loot Razor Sack 75 different settlements, all good, steal here, and then to control at least 7 of the following settlements, either occupying or by vessels and military allies. These are, well, pretty spread out, and most of them are on the old world, so that will become a problem. Of course, you may have, these guys as military allies, and that will suffice. But for the most part, if you want to occupy them instead, then it will be a very large, a very difficult campaign for you to do. Okay, so yeah, it's different of a campaign because of your position. If you achieve it, it will give +2 global recruit capacity as a reward. Decent to ensure, of course, you keep having full armies as replacing the better units. Now, Snikch is the chief assassin of Clan Eshin. He has access to the shadowy dealings. Recruitment costs +200% for everything that is non-Eshin units. Okay, this is a big issue. However, you do have later on a way to minimize this. The clan loyalty, so Eshin Lords never defect, which means you don't have that loyalty mechanic really. And Night Runners and Gut Runner units have armor piercing. This changes things. So you're supposed to focus on the Eshin units. Really nothing stops you from having others, I'll also recommend, but well, there's a way to minimize this, but still, nothing wrong with going with just Night Runners, Gut Runners, Eshin Triads, that sort of idea. It's always a nice campaign to play it thematically, of course. Now, in terms of the climates, it's basically really good. It's really, really good. It's quite good. One of the best factions overall to dominate the map with, and certainly an interesting to try it out for. So, basically, there's not a lot of issues until you reach actually like one, for instance, and because of your initial location, most of the territory, come on, you can see here it's either green or yellow, and that's exactly what you want to see. Your starting province is a 4-settlement province, but you don't own the capital settlement yet. Still, considering that you gain recruit slots with each settlement in the province, it is a great one in order to get fast armies from. Now, it's a decent start, although you're surrounded, and with few nearby enemies, it will not be long before other factions declare war on you, so you gotta be aware of possible attacks, expand really fast in order to ensure that you have a little bit of a hold before you start getting too many enemies. Typical expansion, simply put, take over the whole Cathay area, get rid of those. Expanding into the chaos steps there might not be the best idea until at least you have until at least you have a good control over Cathay, but it's up to you, really. Then there's the possibility of using the sea lanes later on, of course, to transition to different parts of the map. So diplomatically, you're Skaven. Some will hate you, some will let you live. Enemies initially will be greenskins, Cathay, maybe even Dark Elves, which may surprise you that they already have greenskins and Dark Elves here for allies. That's because you may have some good friends with Dark Elves, mainly because they don't have a lot of aversion. For instance, I got some treaties with Dead Flag Fleet, and I should have thought beforehand. So if I would declare war on them, for instance, I'd likely be in a much better position with Loki here, and maybe I could get him as an ally. So that's the sort of idea. Other green skins as well, like Grimcore, for instance, they will like you. Vampire counts as well, because they don't have a lot of aversion. That's always what you should check out, and also confirm that you not only the aversion, but also that you can generate some sort of alliance and good relations, because perhaps you're fighting the same enemies. In this case, you'll be fighting Cathay, you'll be fighting the Chaos factions, you'll be fighting other factions such as the Ogres. So that sort of idea will give you this possibility in terms of outposts. So melee units from the Dark Elves, some cavalry units, some flyers, of course, all of those are really powerful, either from the Dark Elves, the Vampire Counts, or the Greenskins. By all means, those are the units that I would like to merge with my own armies to have a different playthrough. So in terms of mechanics, Undercities, they're a nice idea. Basically, you have plenty of buildings, they provide vision, you can generate some food on those buildings, you can generate some more income, really. It's really up to you what you prefer to shift into. And of course, you can also build the Vermintide building, so you can try to summon the Skaven army to gather that, to attack that settlement and control it. So for the most part, you can just get a lot of Undercities overall in a specific location, and then certainly just spam those Vermintides and try to control the province. That costs a lot of resources, may backfire, but it's up to you. Now, food. It's your unique currency. It is important to keep fighting. It's more taken from captives, like when you fight. There's several typical sources for it. As you can see, most of the consumption comes from settlement or army upkeep, as you can see there, and it's more of an idea to avoid penalties, because for instance, when you have very little food, you have all these penalties who are crazy, but when you have an abundance of food, all that you get is a little bit of growth control and some leadership. It's good, but it's compared to the penalties, it's not really that good, right? Of course. So yeah, in terms of the Skaven corruption, let's talk about Skaven corruption. So what this does is actually increase the numbers of the Menace Below army abilities. So that Menace Below is when you attack someone. Let me see if I can attack someone here just for the sake of it. Well, I cannot. But when you attack someone, you can use the Menace Below, of course, and that has into account the Skaven corruption, which is always important. It also provides food and public order when it is low, okay? And as you can see there, for instance, with the public order, it's reducing the Skaven corruption, of course, as you can see there. But yeah, that's the sort of idea. You know, income from buildings because of the Skaven corruption is increasing. So there's a lot of effects, you know, from the Skaven corruption here. Most of the time, you get problems with public order when it's high, but it's nothing too detrimental. So yeah, an additional mechanic of sorts. Let me remove the oversight here, or the overview here with this Skaven corruption. One additional mechanic of sorts. I'm going to mention this in the army stances, but it's the Skaven ambush on the natural stance. So every battle you initiate, you have a chance to become an ambush, and some army compositions are entirely possible just because of this. Now, rights, they do change for Clan Ashen. So you still have the dominating scheme with food per turn, growth, control, less recruitment costs. It's always nice. Then you have the revitalizing scheme, 2,500 gold to restore all units in your armies to full health, to immediately return all wounded and recovering lords to the faction. This is really cool, especially if you're in the middle of a campaign, you know, in the middle of trying to eliminate some enemy army, and suddenly you don't have, you know, you had a huge loss of forces and you need to replenish quickly. This acts like that. It restores immediately to full health, and it's really great. Then we have the 13th scheme, which costs everything is around the 13. It has 13 turns of effect, 13 of costs, diplomatic relations 13 with Skaven, and your lords have a chance to gain 2 loyalty. I believe you don't have loyalty. I don't know why this is here, but still, because Clan Ashen doesn't get that issue. Then you have hero action success chance plus 13, enemy hero minus 13, and the army ability, the Ashen Clan Stone. So this gives a direct damage to combatants. Like it says on the unit card, typically it works well when you follow that strong versus 25 men unit or above, okay? Strong versus multiple combatants, so that's the sort of idea. A nice army ability with direct damage, it's always good. And then you have the sudden kill scheme. giving snipe to all armies. This means that all your units will remain hidden while firing. Can imagine if you have a lot of those night crawlers. Come on. It's not night crawlers, it's the gutter runners. Yeah, gutter runners. And then we have the stalk to all armies, of course, to hide in all terrain, and then the speed and the missile strength for the night runners. There we go, night runners and the gutter runner units. So overall, very good, especially when you're starting. But do note that it's only one turn. So this is good to start, you know, on a campaign, let's say, or not a campaign. I call it a campaign, but you know, the war against a specific enemy. You know, just pop this one up, and the first few battles against them. Then you have this whole idea, all these attributes, as you can see, which is really good. You know, it can give you the edge that you need. Now, in terms of the shadowy dealings, let's talk about this. So we have two: the Eshin actions and the clan contracts. Let's start with Eshin actions. So these actions are a variety of actions that affect a settlement or settlements here, for instance, or an army, or a variety. Like for instance, this is for this is against the whole faction. Okay, so they have different effects. By all means, check them out. Okay. And what they do have some required ranks in order to perform that. So for instance, if I want to stash rations, no target required. All that you need is to reset all the schemes. I already used one scheme. So for instance, if I give him this, suddenly I can use one. That's the idea. Okay, and now I can use another one. So for instance, I can use sneaky scouting. I'll just select this, this guy. And I cannot confirm because I guess I already used it. Yeah, that's the sort of idea. So yeah, but the idea here is that you have plenty of actions that you can use. Okay, you can increase the number of these schemes by using the Night Lord's Say So, which is no longer available because it requires 2 turns of recovery, as it says there. Okay, and in order to use these, of course, all you need to select is a target, and then to select the agent that will be conducting it, and that's about it. Now, in terms of clan contracts, are similar but are issued by other clans, basically. So this is important for you to increase your diplomatic relationships with them, but as you can see there, I'll gain more reputation with Pestilence and I'll lose with Clan Molder, even though it's kind of advantageous because of course you get like 10 for 1 and just reduce 5 for 1. So it also gives some food and some treasure, which is nice. But in essence, these are missions, okay, that will give you these advantages with different clans of yours. And one major idea is that this bar that you see here, it's precisely what you should have. So if it is on 0, if they are unfriendly, it doesn't give you too much issues. But the more they get friendly, look at that. You get generated food to all armies, more melee defense for heroes, and the recruitment cost minus 280% for Plague Monks and Plague Call Catapults. So basically, this is the way that you can counter the negative trait that you have for your faction. So for instance, if I really want Plague Monks and Plague Claw Catapults, I'll increase the diplomatic relations here with Clan Pestilence. Not the relations, the reputation. It's a different meter. Or for instance, if I want Doom Flayers, Warp Lighting Cannons, Doom Wheels, Weapon Teams, then I'll go with Clan Scryer. Or if I want Rat Ogres and Hell Pits Abominations, let's go with Clan Molder. So you see this sort of idea that you need to increase this reputation, of course, provided that they are still alive, so make sure that they are still alive. And yeah, it's a nice mechanic to have some benefits and have some interaction with the other clans. It's quite cool. I really like it. So yeah, make sure that you explore a little bit of all the Eshin actions that you need and the sort of idea on how it works out. So in terms of army stances, they're quite good. Ambush while attacking is great. It's a great tactical opportunity. You can always ambush while attacking, and of course this faction itself benefits a lot from it, especially with all the style of, you know, being hidden, being sneaky. It's such a great idea. Then we have the Underway, which of course is definitely a great tactical opportunity to traverse different terrain. It's excellent. Just always be careful that the enemy may intercept you, of course. Then we have Channeling. It's kind of moot because the chance to ambush attack is probably better than some Winds of Magic, but perhaps in sieges, for instance, this can be useful. Always remember that you can always engage with sieges, and it just gives you a little bit more Winds of Magic. And then we have in camp, it's excellent. It does cost 50% movement, but of course immune to attrition, enables replenishment, those are always great. And in addition you have raiding, which also gives food, costs 50% movement, all the other effects are known. Ambush, which is waiting for an ambush, of course, for 25% movement, and of course the best idea is to be hidden, and the AI falls into your ambush, or at least it doesn't run away, which is the typical idea. And of course you have March. Now, in terms of province edicts, we have growth and construction cost reduction, we have Skaven corruption and food, which is always good. We also have recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity, not as ideal considering all the other mechanics that we have, but still may be helpful. And we have control and corruption. So overall, very good choices, nothing to research, for instance, which I really love, but oh well, we can't have everything. So in terms of buildings, similar to the greenskins, you actually gain 1 local recruitment capacity with each settlement. So the best provinces for recruitment will be 3 to 4 settlement ones. You start on a 4 settlement one. It's one of the best Skaven factions to actually benefit from this. Now, for the buildings, Shingpo has 2 special buildings, one that gives you access to Night Runners, which is more importantly because you start with this. You also get, of course, the food, the control, the growth, and the income, which is always helpful. It also unlocks the devious plans, which is definitely very important as well. Otherwise, you don't have anything to do with research in the beginning. You also have the gems, which is nice. It's an extra source of income, and of course, it gives you less corruption there, which is always cool. Now, in terms of military buildings, 6 buildings that you have, 2 of them that can actually be built under Eshin. You can do this because typically this is one, it's not tier 1, 2, 3, but rather 2, 3, 4. So under Clan Eshin you actually have 2 buildings that can be built in minor settlements, and of course the tier 3 units become much better because you kind of have everything. Eshin Triads, the Death Runners, even the Eshin Sorcerer here, all of your specific units with the Gather Runners and Slingers and Night Runners, of course. You still have Rattling Guns if you wish, and Poison and Wind Global Deers, the Storm Vermin, of course, the Plague Catapult. So definitely tier 3 units are really powerful, especially with Eshin. Okay, but of course tier 4, that's where you get, some of the most expensive ones. So some of the bigger monsters, the Hell Pits, definitely the Warp Lightning Cannons, all the Jezails, the Doom, the Death Globes, the Poison Wind. So all of these units are really powerful as well indeed. However, remember that you have that recruit cost penalty, of course, but by the time that you reach these out, probably or likely you already have some significant reputation with the other Skaven lords, and of course slightly less cost of that. Gladly, it's not upkeep, recruitment cost, it's not that much of an issue. So if it was upkeep, it would be a bigger problem, of course. In terms of forgot about that. In terms of the infrastructure, so let's pick up on this one. You have the income, growth, and casual replenishment rate. Of course, you always have every single building provides some income, by the way, and some Skaven corruption. And then we have this food, Skaven corruption, and income from all buildings. It also unlocks technologies, which is important. Then we have the income, less recruitment cost, and more importantly, all other types of corruption -3. So this is kind of overlooked sometimes on this building because I don't know why they put it in yellow instead of green, but it's really cool. And then we have a control, Lord faction rank, hero recruit rank, Skaven corruption, Lord recruit rank, and income, of course. So basically anything to ensure that your ratmen keep under control and under wraps. Now, speaking of research, it's fairly extensive, with many that are locked behind buildings, so you have to take that into account, especially once you are, you can actually research it quite fast, and then the buildings can hinder you a little bit. They buff a lot of your units adequately, especially, the early units. It's very easy to buff them up, and it also adds some units to your Vermintide. So the Undercity building, the Vermintide, gets increased a lot, to the point that once you get, you know, to the ultimate experiments, all clan red units are replaced with Storm Vermin, so suddenly the Vermintide becomes quite appealing, and basically you can always expand the Undercities, and at one point just make sure that you try to get a Vermintide everywhere. The enemy may destroy a couple of them, but by all means they cannot destroy everything, and then you spawn the real Vermintide, which is quite nice. It's a mechanic that you kind of have to invest a lot, but it's so rewarding when you manage to pull it off. So as always, you have your Lord specific skills, the melee or yellow line, the army or red line, and the blue or campaign. Starting with the blue line, it does not have replenishment. So most lords actually have a specific skill that allows replenishment. It does have a reduced upkeep. It has some post-battle chance of stealing a magic item and income from post-battle loot, which is kind of nice. The upkeep there is nice, but I wish there was a little bit more into the replenishment. You do have good ambush success chance here, so that may be something that you would like. Now, in terms of the red line, it allows crazy cool combinations. Definitely one of the most interesting, just based on that. Now, they have quite cheap combinations too, allowing you to spend skill points in other areas easily. I'll show you in just a few moments. And then basically, of course, Deathmaster Snikch here, I hate that name, he goes further into the Night Runners and Gutter Runners, specifically with, you know, his abilities, of course. He has this concealment abilities, you know, for the Unspottable, for the Stalk. It plays out so well into being very sneaky, ambush and stalk ideas, so the AI never really knows what is happening, okay? And it's really a wonderful style of play. That's something really important to bear in mind. Now, in terms of lords and heroes, just let me check out here. One thing that you do have is that there's a lot of choice. So you have 5 heroes, assassins. They so for instance, you have the assassins who buff up the Night Runners and Gather Runners, and then you have replenished troops, of course. Then you have the Ancient Sorcerers, which are thematic. You also have the Chieftains. You also have the Packmasters, if you're into bringing some monsters. You have the Plague Priests, the Warlock Engineers. You have something for everyone, really. So plenty of heroes. 2 of them actually provide replenishment, if not mistaken. It's the Packmaster. Yeah, the Packmaster replenishes troops, which is great, and also the Assassin, which is awesome. When the Assassin replenishes troops, it's really great, because typically the replenishing hero is sometimes not that useful, and this one is really useful, especially with the whole playthrough. So yeah, that's the sort of idea. Have plenty of options, one of the best to customize every single army that you have. So here are the red line skills for the Skaven. So the second line mixes them all up a bit, so be on the lookout so that you can maximize your armies. For the most part with Snikch, you're gonna go with the Night Runners and Gutter Runners, but you also have the Death Runners here and the Ashen Triads as well, and always remember that they also end up buffing Storm Vermin and Plague Monks, so there's some combinations here and they're possible as well. So let's go with Snikch. Snikch, you know, he goes great with all the Ashen units, faster, concealing. Most of the time your whole army will have either stalk or even better ways to conceal, honestly. So, especially with the concealment bombs, which are great. So, the main idea is that this is an amazing playthrough where the enemy does not even know where to go to. So some ideas here are just, of course, all Ashen units. This is very thematic, very easy. You can just use all Night Runners if you wish, or all Gutter Runners if you wish. But I just included, of course, some Ashen units for good measure. You know, some anti-large and some damage dealers, of course. They're always fun. Diminishing those numbers, then you can get even some chariots, of course, because they are fast. The sort of idea is to hit hard and fast, and still some plague catapults to have some variety, or even some way of punishing enemy blobs, for example. Or, you know, instead of going into those, you can go into just some monsters. Basically, it's still very fast because they will have some advantages overall, like the Strider, for instance, and a charge bonus. That's where I was aiming at the speed, but the speed is only for infantry units, mind that. So yeah, all in all, you get a lot of good, nice buffs, and nearly anything that goes into melee is really well focused for Snikch, so he's quite powerful indeed. Now, in terms of course, the other types of units, you can go still into the Warlock Engineers, and some they give some upkeep bonuses for the weapons teams. So, of course, you can still have that same idea: some weapons teams forces, or some stun vermin, or even Skaven slaves to hold the line. All that you need is to hold the line. Some people, for instance, don't even go into artillery. I like having some artillery, but it's really up to you. Then we can go into more of the style same. So assassins still favor gutter runners and night runners. So yep, here are a few of compositions with them. You can recognize that these are quite similar to the previous ones. I just focused more on some death runners instead of the Ashen Triads, really. And in this case, you know, just having some plague monks, just having some monsters for good measure. Then, of course, you can have the typical ones that I always recommend. You know, some front lines with weapons teams with some monsters, or just some monster lines with some weapons teams. You can see how effective they are with the red line skills. You can try so many different compositions and still benefit greatly from this. Like, this is a monster line with weapons teams and some chariots, so quite an amazing one to use. Don't mind too much in terms of the heroes that I'm using here. For the most part, all that you need to think about this is that I always advise for you to get a melee lord, a melee hero, and a caster hero. Or if you have like a caster lord, maybe you can get a support hero. But you know, 3 is the number that I typically go for. You could go with 4 or 5. It's really up to you, or none. Really up to you, but just make sure that you have a plan for it. And finally, just a little bit more compositions here with the assassins, perhaps. So in this case, still benefit from that armor piercing. Remember that these guys are armor piercing because of the faction. So still the Ashen Triads, but this time with some plague monks and some monsters. Or in this case, let's go with some vermin, and instead of, you know, having some weapons team, let's have those night runners. So still a more mobile force, especially with those chariots there, the Doomslayers, and then of course some warp lighting. And this is mainly, let's say, to snipe some enemy lords or the enemy artillery, that sort of idea. But of course, notice how effective these are. Actually quite average in terms of red line skills, which is always excellent. So Snikch provides a wonderful playthrough and quite unique. Not only he starts in a fairly different enemies, fairly different location, which is always nice, he also has some quite unique mechanics, so that he has a unique style as well. He goes into ambushing, into sneakiness, and uses up different units, such as the Night Runners, for instance, or the Night Runners with slings. All of them with armor piercing, which is great. Always remember that. This means you'll have a completely different campaign than with other Skaven lords, adding to the replay value of the faction and even the entire race. So finally, like all Skaven, you do not have too many issues with the climate, so it is perfect for those domination or full map completion campaigns. Now, for the most part, your army consists of good infantry, great missile infantry and artillery, good monstrous infantry and single entities, great heroes and varied, so many good heroes and combinations, no flying units, and no real cavalry. These are the ones that you should be trying to get from others in outposts. Replenishment is great, considering the climate, the lords, the heroes, and that you can recover your forces quickly with so many recruiting options. So, time to be a masterful assassin with Deathmaster Snikch of the Skaven.